academy that used to be sound mixing and sound editing, they had two different sound categories. And now they've combined them to just be best sound. Now, what I say to that, that's kind of like saying that director and editing are the same job. They're not. They're very different. And I know you guys are in film school and you understand that. Are you guys all film or recording? Who's recording? All film? Okay. So I went to recording school. I graduated in '08 from here. And like I said, I'm a production sound mixer. So just to, hey, Sam? Do I have to sit in the chair or can I stand? Okay. I'm just going to stand up. Okay. We'll figure this out. Production sound mixer, I'm the guy who works on set while we're getting the sound. Production meaning, production. Most things in film, they're pre-production and post, right? 3 phases. And then if you're really lucky, you get in the phase where you're doing like audio commentaries and all that stuff. I don't know what the word is for that. Is that like post-post or? I don't know. We should come up with a word for that. Anyways, I'm going to sit. Anyways, production sound is what you're doing when you're on set. So once the movie wraps, on day like 45 or whatever, my job's done. I don't do anything in post anymore. Simply because that's not what I do. Like I said, director and editing is not the same thing. So what I do is a little bit more on the directing side of the sound department. I'm there with the actors while we're shooting the movie. Okay, just to get that clear. So I've been doing that since 2009. After I graduated from the LA Recording School / Film School, I was interning for a company called Chelsea Pictures for like a year-ish. And I would be one of their production assistants whenever they had commercials that they were shooting in town here in LA. And that's kind of where I got my bearings to be like, okay, I'm taking my love for sound and my love for being on set, and I'm just kind of putting them together, and I can do this job. And I took out a loan, because when you're a sound mixer, that's part of the job too. You have to have your own gear. So you essentially get hired as a person to operate your own gear when you're on set. And that's one of the things that's the best and worst part about it. You're also kind of like a business guy. When you make your deal, they call you up and say, hey, we'd like to hire you as our sound mixer for this much an hour, and we want to hire your gear, but for the most significant discount we can possibly get for you. So if anyone's interested in doing production sound, that's something you have to know. You're going to have to make an investment into also getting gear. But it's a good thing because you can operate your own gear. You don't have to use someone else's gear to try and get what you need or want out of it. You can kind of be your own guy who knows the tricks and trades of your own gear intimately when you're on set. Because when you're on set, there's definitely going to be moments where you're like, how am I going to fix this problem? Do I tell someone, or should I just be calm and hope it fixes itself? I was just talking to Sam, our guy over here, our technician, that I feel like sometimes even as a production sound mixer, I solve more problems than sound mix on a given day. Troubleshooting is a big part of what you do when you're in a technical field like I am. And that's essentially what it is. It's like a technician. Anyways, so general sound, that's kind of what I had to say about it. Now, after graduating in '08 and then starting doing that in '09, since then I've done over 45 or 50 films. Now, I've focused on narrative in film because that's what I like. Once you kind of get yourself on set, there's so many different options. There's reality TV. There's TV, there's Netflix-style TV, which is almost run like a movie of the week type thing, right? There's industrial, which is, you ever see a guy in front of a green screen who's like, hey, I'm so and so, and I'm talking about the most boring science thing you've ever seen for an educational thing that I'm going to show in class. That's a version of the industry. It's called industrial, where you do things that are like educational. Um, the other side is commercials. There's people who are like me who don't even have an IMDb because all they do is work on commercials. Now, commercials are interesting because that's what I was doing when I was a production assistant. And that's the thing that I've pretty much haven't done since, because I've been focusing mostly on movies and narratives, right? But I remember there was a day where we had a construction site next door, you know, and when you're doing movies or film or anything, you still want to get good quality, whatever you're doing. You don't want someone walking in front of the frame. You don't want that weird blinking light that's like causing flare. And you don't want someone building a house next to where your set is, because that's just going to mess with your audio. So I went over there with the stopwatch, and the guy said, yes, you can ask my workers to stop, but I need someone to keep track of how much time they actually weren't working so that we can deduct that from the pay or whatever the math was there. And I was like, okay. So they sent me over there with a stopwatch. And when you do commercials, it's like, and roll sound, roll camera, action, cut. Action, cut. And the script supervisor goes, guys, that was 0.3 seconds. We need it down to like 0.2. Because they're trying to get almost an entire movie in like 15 seconds. Next time you watch a commercial, see how many cuts there are. There can be like 40 cuts in 15 seconds. They're trying to get something cohesive. So commercials are very not for me. I wanted to read a script, and I wanted to be part of the process. You know, I just think it's better. Now, as a sound mixer, anyone who's a department head, if you're not part of the movie, like a creator of the film, one of the first things to do, and this was always one of my tricks, was someone calls you up, hey, we'd love, you know, to shoot this movie, and we have sound mixers we're talking to, but we're interested in you. When you're like, okay, you're in the interview process or whatever that is, right? Something you want to do is always say, can I read the script? May I read the script, please? And when they send you the script, read it. It's not always going to be the best script. Sometimes you get scripts and you're like, someone said yes to this? Other times you'll read it and they're not even in the right script format. But still, it's art is art, and you can't say the art that they're doing should be the art that I understand, right? So always read the script, and then you're involved in the movie before you've even been talked to by the person who's going to be the person who hires you. Once you learn the language of the thing, you can have specifics, and you can give notes. As a sound person, I'm always looking for red flags. Does the movie take place 90% inside of a vehicle that's going to be moving? Well, I would need to know that because I'd need to plan accordingly. Are we driving the car? Are we putting the car on a tow truck? Are we doing it inside of a stage and we're just kind of moving the car so it looks like it's driving? Are we doing rear projection? Are we doing green screen? Stuff like that. When you're trying to get hired on a movie, I would say try to get the script as soon as possible if you're a department head, and then try to essentially become involved. Become that person who knows what they're saying when they say something about something. Be like, oh, you're talking about when that person does that thing. Here. Oh, we might be next to a noisy road? Well, let's go take a look at it, or what are your concerns? It's a good thing to know if you're trying to get on a film. That's kind of how Sound of Metal came to me, was that I had a contact who I'd worked with who recommended me for that job. And the first thing I said was, send me the script. I had done this movie for A24, production company that I'm sure everyone is familiar with. They had just started producing their own films. So I think maybe their second or third movie that they actually were like, we're the full film production. I was involved with. They shot that here in LA. It was this film called The Lovers with Deborah Winger and Tracy Letts. It's a really good movie. check it out if you can. But I'd worked with those producers before on that film, and then they called me up to do Sound of Metal. In Boston is where we filmed the movie, in the hottest month in Boston. We were filming in an Airstream trailer, and it was insane how hot it was in there. But you know, it's another thing about film, you won't always be comfortable when you're working. So I got the script and I read it, and I had notes, and I talked to Darius Martyr, our director, and he had been trying to get the movie made for like 10 years, right? It had almost happened, and then it didn't happen, and then it almost happened, and then it didn't happen. And this time it was definitely happening. One of the things when someone calls me about a show, it's like, hey, we need a sound guy. You know, we're going to be shooting, you know, say it's, what's this, June? And like, we're hoping to, you know, start shooting in October, November. I'm always like, just call me when you have a production office open, when people are on the payroll. You know, that's when the movie's real, it's happening. You'll definitely get calls about people who are very excited and want you to work on their movies, but you can never count on exactly anything happening at the right time, ever. It's just film time, especially COVID film time. That's a whole different thing, too. But just don't ever, if there's no office or payroll or anything going on, don't ever be like, okay, I'm clearing my schedule and I'm going to do this movie. It's a guarantee. It just doesn't work that way. And it's not anything personal. It's just business, right? So Sound of Metal, they'd been trying to get it made, you know, and it didn't happen. This time they had an office. They had payroll. They had everything happening. They had everyone in place. In fact, they'd been looking for a mixer, and they couldn't find one. So-and-so in Boston was busy. Another person didn't want to take it for whatever the rate was. It was like a $3 million movie. It was very tiny, very scrappy, small production. Great production, but very small budget. So I read the script, and I talked to Darius, and I was hired. I was the guy, right? So first thing he did, he put me in touch with this guy named Nicholas Becker, who was the post-production supervisor. And again, Nicholas had been on the movie for like 10 years. They'd been talking about it, and it's finally getting made. So they had these crazy ambitions. You know, when you have a thing that you're trying to get done forever, you have a lot of time to think about it, obviously. I mean, so something that they wanted to do was these crazy sonic experiments with character, because Sound of Metal, for those of you who don't know, it's about a metal drummer who goes deaf. And when I read the script, you know, it explained that yes, he does go deaf, and yes, it's something that is prominent part of the story, but it wasn't necessarily like, and we're also going to be recording the movie this way. I mean, it just doesn't work that way. Everything kind of gets decided on set, right? So one of the things they talked to me about was that they wanted to record kind of like an inside perspective of what was going on inside of his head. So what I did was I kind of took what they wanted and streamlined the process. So this is the part where I said I was going to start getting a little bit technical, okay? And if anyone has any questions or any concerns or anything I'm saying doesn't make any sense, please let me know. Okay, so when you're recording sound, you have the boom mic, which is, you know, probably the most traditional way of recording a movie, right? Go back to the 1920s, there's a guy holding a mic above the actors' heads. Then came like the 70s, 80s, 90s, where they started getting crazier with how they did coverage on movies, and they came up with these lavalier mics, which are essentially the mics that you hide inside of the actor's clothing. The way that I sound mix is that I use the boom and the lavalier. So that's two sources of sound. They can get it off of this, or they can get it off of this, what they're wearing, right? And I'm taking these tracks, say there's 5 characters, right? Every single one of these 5 characters, they have a microphone. So say one of my fingers is a microphone, right? And this is what I'm recording. I'm recording this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy. On top of that, I also have a boom mic, right? So these are called isolated tracks. And this is something you deliver to them so they can listen to the whole thing, or they can listen to all the tracks individually, and they can create a post-production mix, 5.1, 7.1, whatever they want to do. If they want to record the sound of Darth Vader only in that corner, they can do that in post, because I gave them the isolated track, right? Now, you take all these isolated tracks, and you turn them into a mix. So all of these fingers or tracks all go together in one master track. That's the recording mix. Everyone follow me so far? Okay. Still technical. I'm not done yet. So that's the traditional way of recording a movie. You want everything as clean and crisp and awesome sounding as possible. For Sound of Metal, we had a whole nother layer of this. We also had all these isolated tracks over here that were just for post-production. And these were contact mics, plant mics, whatever we could do in addition to record a new perspective. So when you're shooting a movie, the lens is essentially like the human eye, right? And the boom mic is like creating the human ear. So you're recreating those two things traditionally so that people who watch the movie generally understand, okay, I'm hearing and I'm seeing what would be happening if I were essentially there, right? That's essentially what a movie is. It's taking a play, if we were watching it here, except it's been filmed and recorded, you know, stylized for our entertainment. So for Sound of Metal, the other thing we did is that we recorded the perspective of what was going on inside of our character's mind. So when I got there, they wanted to like take the boom mic, which recreates the human ear, and they're like, let's fill that thing full of cotton so it's a muffled ear so that we can essentially recreate what the human ear would be hearing, except this time we're going to mess with it so that everyone's classic perspective of what film is going to be altered. You know, it's a stylized way of essentially explaining a story in a way where people could understand. I mean, we've all been to a concert, right, where it's way too loud, and for 2 days afterwards, it's like, I hope my hearing comes back. It's like muffled or distorted or whatever, right? So that's what they wanted to do. And I was like, okay, interesting. But what I ended up doing, still technical, almost done with the technical stuff, is that I streamlined the process and I recorded it so that it was all done on set. Because, you know, we were filming a movie, and it was a $3 million film we were shooting in like 20 days, and we just don't have time to do all these crazy sound experiments that we may never use. You know, when you're on set, you have 12 hours. That's when the actors' contracts are up. That's when the sun goes down. You know, so time is money when you're on set. The clock is ticking the second you get there, right? So what they were saying is like, we should take this and we should also record a whole different movie at the same time. It's like, that's going to take a lot of time on set. So what I did, like I said, I streamlined everything. I time coded it so that we could deliver it to post, and I had all these additional tracks that were only for post-production. Hours and hours and hours. Every single time we were recording the high-quality audio, we were also recording the low-quality audio so that we could deliver both things simultaneously. However, this is what everyone was definitely going to hear, and this is what maybe was going to come into play sometimes. Something that I had never done before as a production sound mixer. So I delivered all this stuff, and I handed the baton over to post, because I only do production, right? I was like, good luck. Make it sound awesome. And all of this was decided in the post-production process. Like I said, I read the script, and it didn't say anything like he's talking to a character, and we just hear the inside of his head. It was a straightforward story, just like most movies are, most scripts are. And then when I saw the movie, I realized that they'd taken what we had done and turned it into the main character of the film. So when I saw Sound of Metal, even I was blown away because I had no idea that's what it was going to turn into. And then it's when everything started happening with it, where it's like, oh, now it's nominated for the BAFTA. Now you're up for a CAS award. all that kind of stuff. My father, hi Dad, if you're watching, he started texting me, reviews. When you read the review of a film that you've worked on, no one ever says anything about the sound. Like, even when I'm on set, no one ever comes up to me and goes, wow, man, the dialogue was so rich today. It just doesn't happen. When you do production sound, they want it to happen. They want it to be great. They don't want to hear about it. They just want it to be there. And they trust you, which is the good thing. But when Sound of Metal was coming out, there'd be like a review and like 1 paragraph, 2 paragraph, and then the 3rd paragraph or so would be like, 5 full sentences about how great the sound was, which just doesn't happen. So my dad, hi Dad, hi Mom, he started texting me and saying like, this is the one. I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then it started becoming real. Even when I was at the Oscars, sitting there, and everyone's like, you're gonna win, you're gonna win, you're gonna win. I could not let myself believe it. I mean, mostly because, that happens all the time. You're gonna win, you're gonna win. Oh, sorry, went to so-and-so. Next time, but it was a full sweep. We won every sound award we could win for that film. Now, thank you. Just something to say about it is that it was something that I'd never done before, so it was kind of radical. I knew that we had kind of a safety net because we had recorded the high quality sound, so they had it. But when you watch the movie, even all the muffled, deaf audio still has all this life and vibrance to it because it's all recorded on set. And that's something that I learned here in this school when I was in recording school. What you want to do is get everything in the can when you're there doing it. That's one of the things that I took away from this school that I still use this day every time I'm on set. You don't ever want to think, well, this will sound great once they send it through the computers and it's going to be post. You want to get the highest quality, best quality sound you can get, even if it's muffled, gross, distorted audio that they may never use on something like Sound of Metal, with integrity, straightforward, keep going, and get the best sound you can get and deliver the best quality you can deliver every time. And I still use that, to my philosophy of how I do sound. Is I'm never thinking about post, I'm always thinking about, is they're gonna use my tracks, and then post can take these tracks and they can, use them as a good foundation. But I never want to give them anything that's like, well, we tried, so maybe you guys can make it sound better than I could. It's never been my philosophy. If you're a sound mixer, always try to get it in the can when you can, so that you're giving good quality tracks all the time. So thank you, LA Film School and Recording School. I still mix my tracks like it's music. I'm never afraid to blend tracks together. I've seen a lot of people who just turn them on or turn them off. I'm always mixing all the time. I'm always trying to follow my heart, listen to my ears, trying to deliver some great sound. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, there's a couple days I've walked away and been like, might have been a little too heavy on this person's thing. But you learn that through experience, and you learn how to kind of like sharpen your tools and adjust to whatever's happening on set when it's happening. Does anyone have any questions? Anything? Yes. The question is, what kind of notes did I have on the script when I read it? So, I kind of said this before, but I'm always looking for red flags, right? Something where you could say, hey, this might be a sound problem. If the movie takes place inside of an airplane, Flaming Hot is a good example. It's a movie that I did last year that's out right now on Disney+. It's about the invention of the Flaming Hot Cheeto. If anyone hasn't seen it, go watch it. It's great. It's not quite what you expect. It's better, I promise. But that movie takes place like on a noisy factory floor. right? So the director called me up and was like, "How do we do this?" And this is when it's a good thing, when it's a collaboration, which is what you want. And I said, well, let's just record the factory like it's a character, and we'll just stick mics in strategic places where the camera's looking. And I mean, there's this big long shot where he's getting hired on the Cheeto floor, and the guy's walking through, and he's like, "This is the duster," and the camera points over, and it's got this machine, and I had a microphone pointed right at it, and as soon as he pointed at it and the camera moved over, whoop, fader up. And this is the bagging machine. Okay, they're looking this way. Now we're looking at this, and I'm bringing that fader up, and now it's down. You know, whatever the camera perspective was looking at the time, right? And we did it that way, and I think it sounds great. I mean, I know there's a lot more machine stuff in the movie that posted, you know, to connect the dots of what things are and how they work. But for the most part, I think it's mostly our sound in there. I mean, nothing quite makes a sound like a factory floor at a Cheetos factory. It's a very specific sound. And that's kind of the thing you want to do too. You want to always focus on what you can get when you can get it. I did this movie once with Nicole Kidman. It's called Destroyer. And we had this scene at the carousels at like Griffith Park. There's this carousel over there, and we had this whole like money exchange scene happening there. And they're like, well, we don't need the carousels. Like, let me get some mics out, and we'll point them at the carousel, and we'll like record it in stereo so it makes this big noise. Because the money exchange scene, again, you know, this is all decided in post. And when you watch it, you know, they had like 10 lines of dialogue, but it's not in the movie. Now you see them talking, you see someone shove a briefcase, she grabs it and leaves, and you're hearing this roaring sound of a carousel behind them. And it's kind of like, oh, cool, they ended up using that. Because it's implied, and like in your head, you're like, okay, these lines are important, but when you cut it together, you're like, okay, maybe the carousel can be a metaphor for the games we play or something, I don't know. But whenever you see an opportunity to record something that's very specific, you know, if it's somebody slamming a car door or walking up, you know, gravel or something, like that happens all the time. Anything that's specific to your movie, you want to make sure to record it and record it well so that they have it. And that's something I'm always looking out for. Any other questions? Anyone? Yes. The question is, do I actually use the boom mic? Yes. God, yes. The boom mic is the mic that I love to use. I have so much respect for my boom operators and the way that they operate, because I'm a sound mixer. And I mean, when you do sound on set, it typically comes in 3 people, right? So it's me, I'm the department head, I'm the guy with the headphones sitting in front of the cart with that weird look of concentration on his face, right? Then there's the boom operator, who's an extension of me, and I can only get as good sound as good as my boom operator, essentially, right? Someone who can stand on set and communicate to me, this is what I think you should do, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm talking to my boom operator all day like they're my wife. You know, it's like we are in sync, like we're gonna go to the Super Bowl, you're the quarterback and I'm the coach kind of thing. Like that's the kind of relationship you need to have with your boom operator. And then the third person is this person called the sound utility, who's essentially the person who works as an assistant to me and the boom operator. They mic up the actors, they jam time code, they change batteries. Do you mind getting me a bottle of water? I can't leave because this is a 12-minute take and I'm gonna die at maybe 10 minutes, kind of thing. But at the same time, I'm always teaching my utility how to mix. They're always sitting next to me and I'm like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do here and that and that and this is why I'm doing this here. But the boom mic, yes, definitely I use the boom mic all the time. I mean, boom mic it's so much more than just holding a microphone above your head. You have to like, I'm gonna stand up. So you're holding the mic. You want to not be in the light, right? You see this shadow on the ground? So you want to be on one side or the other of the light. Otherwise, if you cross somebody, seeing that shadow on my face, then you're going to be in the movie. And trust me, they'll tell you. We're seeing a little C-stand over here. There's a little reflection. Boom! Out! So you don't want to be that guy. At the same time, if there's reflections behind you, you can't be in the reflections. You know, you also don't want to be in an actor's eye line. If you sometimes get an actor who's like pouring their soul out on camera, you know, and when you boom, you typically have to move, not like jump around or anything, but just slight movements, right? So if you have an actor and they're bearing their soul, you don't want to be like doing something weird, you know. So just know if you're interested in booming, which I hope all of you are, because it is a really great job. You're right in the action, you're right on set, you're like so important in the movie. Possibly more important than the sound mixer. Equal. But yes, definitely, I definitely use the boom. I use a Sheps CMIT5U. It's a blue mic. So if you ever see the making of a movie, see if the mic is blue. It's a Sheps. It's an industry standard microphone. And I've seen pictures of them doing Star Wars, you know, big giant movies, Christopher Nolan films, and you see pictures of them with the boom mic. If it's blue, that's the mic I use. Questions? Yes. Yeah. Okay. The question is, I mentioned earlier that I do more troubleshooting than sound mixing sometimes, and you're asking what are some of the examples that I do to troubleshoot. I mean, they can be as small as I can't hear this person's sound, can we check their mic, to the cart is on fire, can we please ask for 5 minutes to not roll sound. Both things have happened. Only one once, but yeah, I mean, it's hard to say because every day is an adventure. I just did a movie that's a remake of Alexander's Terrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. And there's this scene where it involves a lot of water. And it's like, well, are the actors getting wet? Are they wearing wetsuits? Are they going up to their knees? Or, you know, like, what is the answer here? Where can I put a mic and how that it won't get destroyed? And then it turned into a question of, well, if the mic gets wet, will they get shocked? Well, this is like having an electronic. It's like, no, it's not like a toaster. It's not. It's a microphone and it's got a battery in it, you know, and like little things like that. And then we got to the point where, okay, they're not going to get completely wet when we're doing the scene, but we have a hot tub right here that they're going to sit in between takes to stay warm. So they're not in cold water. It's like, well, are they going to have to get demiked before they go into the hot tub and then remiked? And then are we going to have to get costumes involved when they get demiked and remiked? You know, things like that are happening, not exactly like that, but little things like that happen every show. You know, and again, you read the script, you're like, okay, they're getting wet, so I need to know that. And then you try to get in there and figure it out to an extent. I mean, you could have a solid answer where they could say, like, nope, they're only going to get wet to right here. And then you show up on set on the day and they're like, they're getting totally drenched. Everything changes all the time. So you kind of have to troubleshoot and adapt. And then I was just speaking at the graduation on Thursday, and I was mentioning that when you're shooting a movie, it's like a spinning wheel, right? And like you want the wheel to be strong and fast and have a lot of momentum. You want to make a great product. And then when you start saying like, oh no, they can't get wet, that's bad for sound, that's you poking holes in the wheel. You want to create someone's vision and come up with solutions that will not drag the movie down. You want to amplify what's happening. And that's the hardest part about troubleshooting. You want to have a strong, positive bummer like for sound. And you want to kind of fall on your sound sword and be like, I will find the solution to whatever this problem is. Maybe we'll just use the boom mic, you know, and like, it was definitely a good 2 or 3 days of pulling my hair out of frustration, but I'm always super hard on myself too. I'm in a point in my career now that if it's like, oh, I'm not getting perfect sound, I am failing, and I need to not do that to myself. But I care, and it's hard not to care. But yeah, that's, you know, it's troubleshooting all the time. Sometimes the gear just doesn't work. That's why you need to know your gear. You'll get on set sometimes and you'll hit the power button and you're like, it's not turning on. That's weird. We're shooting in 10 minutes. Got 10 minutes to figure this out. Like 9.5 minutes until I have to go to an AD and be like, hey, buddy, yeah, I need like 5 minutes to figure this out. You know, usually those 10 minutes are just slowly, calmly work through the problem one step at a time instead of freaking out and like blaming everyone else. You know, that's another thing. Just like be calm and work through the problems. Something that I've always struggled with, but I've been able to mostly not cause a huge ruckus. You know, the one time that our cart caught on fire, I wasn't even there. I was in the car on my way to set, and my sound utility wanted to jam time code. So she called me up. She's like, hey, how far away are you? I was stuck in traffic. I was like 5 minutes away. I was like, I'll be there in 5 minutes. So just hit the button, and then you can jam time code. And then she called me 2 minutes later. She's like, the cart is on fire. It's like, power it down. Get out the fire. I will be there in 2.5 minutes. You know, just at the same time, we're making a movie. We're not curing a disease. There's no lives on, you know, no one's gonna die. We're just making a film. And that's a good way to look at it, I think. Questions? Anyone about anything? Yes? Okay, that's a great question. The question is, as a department head sound mixer, do I get to hire my team, and what do I look for in the people that I hire on my team? So I've definitely had a lot of people who have talked to me and said, I love what you do, I want to do sound. And I was like, cool, stay on my radar, let's exchange numbers, and then when an opportunity comes, I would love to hire you. And then that opportunity comes, and I get them on set, and they're like, maybe I want to do camera. I want someone who wants to do production sound and not just be on set. Because if you're on set and you don't like what you're doing, it is a giant chore. You won't like it. You know, and so it's very important that we're passionate about the things that we do. Now, it's okay to be like, well, I'm on the fence about sound, and I kind of want to do it. And then you get on set, you're like, this isn't for me. That's fine. Just make sure you tell me that you don't like it so that I can move on to the next person. I won't be mad at you if you say, I really thought this is what I wanted to do and I don't. I'll be mad at you if you're like, well, I don't want to do this and now I'm going to make your life harder because of it, because all I want to do is the absolute minimum because I hate this job. So I'm looking for someone who absolutely understands what sound is and why they want to do it. And then from there, we can be friends and work together and keep collaborating. I have 2 people who are like my #1 people in New Mexico right now where I live, and they are the best team I've ever had. And they both started sound mixing and doing sound almost 2 years ago, both of them. And they're just great. I really appreciate them. Trey and Emily, if you're listening. And it's great because when you're like working together, you can inspire each other. You know, there's no suggestion that's a bad suggestion. I'm not going to look at someone who's only been doing sound for a year, and if they say, like, maybe we should move the mic here instead of there, I'd be like, dude, no. Maybe if you get 15 years in. It's not the way it works. It's all about getting the best sound. We're all on the same team. We're all trying to do the same goal, And that's what I want. I want someone who can understand how and why, and then I can also learn from them, just like they can learn from me. That's what I want. It always freaks me out when someone goes, "This is my boss." It's like, "Ooh, no, no, no," because I just don't feel that way. It's a collaboration. You know, I would never call the director my boss. This is a guy directing the movie. We're collaborating on the thing. But if you want to be a boom operator or sound utility, I think what you should do is get to know a lot of mixers. And there's a lot of nice people out there. There's a lot of mean people out there. So I would kind of just get to know a lot of people and get yourself on set and work with a lot of people to see what you want out of sound. You know, you could be working on the greatest movie ever with the worst people, or you could be working on the worst movie ever with the greatest people. You know, you want to make sure that you work with a lot of people and you work with them well. If you want to be a sound mixer like me, I don't know if this is the right way to do it, but I started as a sound mixer. I never boomed or utilitied. I bought the gear and I just went for it. Now, a lot of this came out of just not understanding completely what the situation was. But I just did it. And my first movie that I was working on, I was a production assistant, and I told everyone I did sound, I do sound. And then I eventually got hired on a movie, and I took out a loan, and I bought this gear. And I was reading through the manual as to how to operate the gear as I was shooting my first movie. Don't do that. Read and know the gear you want. You know, I've definitely found my sound, and that's the thing too. As a sound mixer, you can have a sound that you create through preamps and gain staging and everything. And I think I've found the balance as to how I can make things reliable. Every time I try a new piece of gear, I was like, it doesn't quite sound right. I use these microphones that are called Countryman mics, Countryman B6s. Now, they're very, very small, so you can conceal them easily in what people are wearing, right? But they're fragile. If you get, you know, a kid on set or like a twitchy actor or whatever, and they're yanking on the thing all day, they can break the mic. It's one of the most fragile microphones, like lavalier microphones, that you can have. And I had a sound mixer a couple years ago tell me, you got to get these other mics. They're just like the B6s. They're completely unbreakable. They're longer. They're the same size capsule. They sound exactly the same. There's microphones called these DPA microphones, the 660s. I was like, okay, cool. And he showed me this video on YouTube. And this is nothing against the DPAs. I just want to make that clear. Showed me this video on YouTube of this guy who like wrapped it around like this metal suitcase and swung it around like a lasso, and then he put it on and it still worked fine. I was like, whoa, that's insane. So I ordered one. I got on a wait list. They were so popular you had to be on a wait list to get these microphones. And when I finally got it, I plugged it in and I was like, just doesn't sound right. So it kind of got moved to my backup mics, you know, in case I have one that breaks. You got to kind of trust your ears and know what it is that you're going for and why. I do have these other microphones that I have in my arsenal. They're these Sanken microphones. I'm going into technical again, everybody, just so you know. That I do put on an actor who, when they scream a lot, they're big and they're not as easy to conceal like the B6 microphones that I use. I had this movie that I did called Coyote vs. Acme that hasn't come out yet, but we had this actor who was pretending to be like this animated character, and it'd be going around and be like, oh, blah, blah, blah. He was wearing a giant green screen suit, and all he was doing was screaming. So I was like, oh, well, it's green screen. They're going to etch it out, so just put the big microphone so I can get his audio clear, but I don't have to conceal it inside the wardrobe. So it was a win-win on that situation. Those are the Sanken COS 11s, COS 11s, if anybody's keeping track. Did I answer that question? Okay. Next question. Anyone got a technical question? Okay. No pressure. It doesn't have to be technical. So the question is, audio quality wise, do I prefer to be on location somewhere or on a stage? Doesn't matter to me. They're both noisy locations. You know, it doesn't matter if we're in a studio somewhere. There's always going to be a truck going by or an airplane flying over. Some way you're going to have to hold for sound. I've yet to find a soundproof soundstage. It doesn't quite exist. It can be better, but not completely. I don't think I have a preference. No, I enjoy a small challenge. It's like, oh, cool, we're going to be filming in a swamp. All right, we'll see how this goes. You know, one thing about film, you'll never be comfortable. It's always going to be like a scenario where you're like, oh, crazy, we're going to be on a train for 90 days. Okay, well, I'll figure it out. I mean, Sound of Metal, the Winnebago, we're in an Airstream, and they're driving around, and we had a day where all we did was drive around in the Winnebago, and there's a bathroom in there that I sat at. I cramped myself in with my bag, and I was thinking, oh, cool, we're just going to be driving. Nope, long day. Question? Anyone? Yes. Okay, so here, great, technical question. Let's talk gear. Yeah, let's talk gear. So the transmitters that I use, that was the question, what are my favorite lavalier transmitters? Now, everything that I do now is wireless. I had the cable connected to the boom microphone for like the first 2 or 3 years that I was sound mixing. And then after like the 10th time, they're like, you can't be here because of the cable. I was like, I'm going wireless. I use Electrosonics transmitters. They have this ability to change frequencies and power. So you can go wideband. Again, we're going technical here. So when you have frequencies on microphones, you have to kind of choose a block, right? And on that block, you have something like 1,000 frequencies. Now, Electrosonics has something where instead of going on blocks, they're like, everything's wideband. We have a giant spectrum. They're essentially handing us, here's everything that used to be all stuck inside of one situation, and now you have all situations. But they also have these transmitters where you can change power. So you put 2 batteries inside of a microphone, and they're like, we're going to have them go all the way down by the beach, and they're going to be walking along the ocean, but we're seeing everything, so you got to be in the parking lot. That's a problem, right? How am I going to get range if we're trying to get sound from a quarter mile away? Electrosonics has this ability where you can just kind of hit this button, and it goes from 100 watt to 250, and you get like double the power instantly. However, it burns through the batteries quickly. Now, these microphones, the wireless ones, you know, I have yet to find a battery that will last for a 12-hour day. So you have to have your utility be like, hey, man, I'll let you know when these batteries are so we can strategically change them. You always want to change batteries between setups. You don't want to go take 5, okay, and we're going again. Wait, I got to change a battery. They hate that. You want to make sure you find a way and be like, okay, we got maybe 2 more takes in this. Then maybe we'll have 3 minutes while the camera turns around. We'll change the battery then. And Electrosonics has always been helpful for that. Other things I've used, I've had battery issues, I've had power issues, I've had frequency issues. They're rock solid, and I just couldn't do it without them. They're definitely the company that I use. I've tried other things, like I like them, and I use them for my wireless boom as well. And I have so many mics now, I don't even know what happened. For the longest time, I had 4 mics and a boom, and that's how I'd sound mix every movie. And then somehow I ended up with 12 to 15. And one of the interesting things about sound, it doesn't matter how many people you mic in one day, you still get paid the same. If you're miking 1 person or 15 people, still get paid the same. So sometimes it's just going to be a lot of miking, a lot of fixing things. But, you know, we love what we do. and we love challenges. I use Denicky slates. Denicky is a company here in California. They have these awesome backlights that you can give to camera, so they can use them in the dark. They also have a feature where you can flip the light on, and if you're in harsh daylight, you can still read the LED numbers, even if you're like in the desert of New Mexico where the sun's beating down on us, you can still read the time code numbers. That's awesome for post too. I used to not have one of those, and then post came after me and said, oh, I think you need to get a better slate. I use Comtex, and I also use these things called IF Blues, which are the headsets that you give to the director, and he's listening to what you have. IF Blue is like a Comtech, but it's made by Electrosonics, who makes the company that makes the transmitter packs. I use an Aton Kantar sound recorder. It is a beautiful machine that I've only ever used was the Aton. When I started sound mixing, I swear this is true. I've told this to people who are like, that's a lie. I swear this is true. Ready? I found an article who the guy who had just won the Oscar, he labeled all of his sound gear that he used, and I took this down to Location Sound here in LA, and I said, I want a quote to get this gear. And then I won my own Oscar several years later using that gear. But the Aton is a great recorder. I've never used a sound device or a Zaxcom professionally, but I've tinkered. Everything's great. I mean, I love the fact that there's actually things that exist that help me do my job. You know, it's like I used to be a musician, and like amplifiers to me are like the coolest things. It's like somebody made this so I can just crank this up and just blow everyone's ears out. Like this is a thing. I love gear. It's one of my things. Anyone wants to buy me something for Christmas? Gear. Okay. But it's also something that begs you to spend more money on it. One of the best things about it is if you get good gear, it does like 90% of the work for you. You don't ever want to get gear that you're like, oh, this is halfway broken or this preamp's blown out or whatever. You want to make sure to get high quality stuff so that you're not fighting it, overcompensating for it being broken when you do other things, if that makes sense. More questions?
We have a question. Ooh, that was really loud.
Oh, hey.
Hey,
microphone.
sorry. I know, just kind of snuck in there. Okay, we have a question from Hannah Rutherford from YouTube.
Oh, this is online?
Yeah, online.
Hey, Hannah.
Yeah. Hey, Hannah. All right. Hannah is an audio production student and has a question. Okay. On the topic of recording and experimenting with a deaf character POV, have you seen the film A Quiet Place? And if so, what did you think of that?
A Quiet Place has a deaf character in it?
Well, Hannah. Oh, his daughter. Okay, I haven't seen it. Okay.
I have seen it. It did not occur to me when I saw the film. What was her question about working with a deaf actor?
Okay, so on the topic of recording and experimenting with a deaf character point of view,
right?
Have you seen the film A Quiet Place? And if so, what did you think of it?
The Quiet Place is good. I have worked with deaf actors more than just on Sound of Metal. I did a show on Sundance Now before Sound of Metal. I did 2 seasons of the show called This Close that has 2 deaf actors who play these best friends. And one of the things I learned about it is that even characters who are deaf still kind of talk. They still mumble or they try to communicate while they're moving their hands, right? So of those 2 deaf characters, I had one that would always talk while she signed. And then we had another character, the guy in that show, he was almost completely mute. He never spoke. But I still threw a mic on him because every now and then he would giggle or make a noise, or he can still kind of like, ah, and try to get people's attention. It is a sensitive thing to approach, but they were so sweet, those 2. They understood that they wanted it to be good, even though they were never going to be able to hear their own show. They understood the process of this needs to be as commercial as possible, so I'm going to put in your hands to do whatever you think is right. But there can be kind of a weird sensitivity towards it. I just approach it, you know, just like we're coworkers. Like, okay, well, what do you think? when we were doing Sound of Metal, there's a scene at the end of the movie, spoilers, for Sound of Metal. If you haven't seen it and you don't want the movie ruined, cover your ears or don't watch. He gets his hearing back at the end, but not quite how he wants. He gets an implant, and his audio isn't the same. It's distorted and gross and not what he wants. There's this heartbreaking scene where he's, we as an audience are watching this beautiful performance of these two characters singing, and then you go again to the inside of his head and you hear what it sounds like to him, and it's just noise, static. We had a character on Sound of Metal who was our advisor. I don't know what you'd say. He was essentially an actor who had cochlear implants, and I would just kind of pick his brain about, what does this sound like? How does it work? Did you have hearing before? Did you get implants later? And he said, yes, I had hearing before, and when I got implants, it sounded like everyone was talking like they had just sucked in a giant thing of helium. Hi, hello, how are you? What? And eventually, he's like, now it just sounds like sound. Like, it was so extreme at the beginning, and then after, a couple weeks, when his body essentially adapted and got used to it, he's like, now it just sounds like how I hear. I think it's kind of like, people who have tinnitus. They're like, well, yeah, at first I could hear it really loud, and now I just go about my life, and sometimes when I'm in a room that's really deadened for sound, I can hear the ringing again. So kind of a similar thing. I'm fascinated by it, and that's another reason why I feel like that movie was good for me to work on, because I generally had an interest. And when I read the scripts, and it's that scene where he's just going about his life, and then suddenly his hearing is just gone. It's like, is that the way it is? Is this real? Could this happen to like anyone? So I generally had an interest in it because I'm always thinking about my hearing. But yeah, The Quiet Place is pretty good, I thought. They made a sequel, right?
Okay, yes.
I believe
okay,
that was nominated for Best Sound, so it's got to have great sound in it.
Thank you. I think you answered her question.
Okay.
I'm looking in the chats, but yeah, I think you're good. Thanks.
Any other questions? Should I wrap it up? One more question? Yes. Okay, so the question is, when I bought my sound kit, it was an Oscar-winning sound kit that I just kind of blazingly went for. And is that what I recommend people should do, or should they do something else, or what should they do? I don't know if the way that I did it is the right way to do it. I knew that if I spent this much money now, and I really wanted to spend this much money, but I just settled for this, that I'd end up spending this much money anyways. Because the way the sound gear goes, it's like super professional, high quality, or you're compensating for something. There's like 3 companies that really are kind of like the kings that I see on set all the time. Sound Devices, Zaxcom, Aton. Those are the ones that I usually see. Every now and then you get someone who has like a Fostex or something, It's hard to kind of explain that to people. I think getting in front of the thing might be a good way to do it. Yeah, if you can, go down and rent something and spend some time with it alone. It's kind of like driving a car. It's like, sure, I can do this as a permit with my parents sitting next to me, but maybe I should probably just get behind the wheel by myself and see if I can actually do this kind of thing. It's also hard because the only way to do it is to be on set. You can sit in your garage and you can think of how it could happen, but once you get on set, it's a whole different ball game. So if you're a person who's thinking about buying gear today and becoming a sound mixer, I would read a lot of articles. I would weigh the differences between what things are and what aren't. I would ask a lot of questions, pick people's brains, and I would see if I could get on set somewhere and see how it actually operates. That's what I would do. And then, get a quote and find out what you can get and what you can't get. The gear is an interesting, difficult part of it. And I've been fortunate because I feel like the package that I got right away like worked solidly. But I've definitely seen a lot of people on set who are having problems because they didn't get, the right gear. Or sometimes you can read something like, oh, this has this feature that I want, and then you can get it, and it doesn't exactly do the right feature that you have. I've seen that happen too. I keep my stuff pretty basic. My sound cart is small. I've seen people have lots of sound carts that are like monster carts. It's like they're wheeling the circus onto set. My thing is like the size of this chair, and that's all I need. I try to keep it very simple, basic, keep the main thing the main thing. Any other questions? Anyone? Nothing? Okay. All right. Well, yes. The question is, how much do I get paid when I work on a movie? That's difficult. So, I mean, you get your hourly rate, and then you get paid for your gear, right? I mean, typically the hourly rate can be anything between like $20 to $80 an hour, and then the gear rental can be anywhere between $200 and $900 an hour, depending on what you do. There's commercials, which typically pay the best. And then there's indie movies, which typically pay the worst, but are some of the funner to work on. So one of the things that you kind of want to do is understand that there's a huge balance that you want to accomplish. The thing I've always tried to do is stay in the union, work with the union. I have a family. I have a wife and 2 kids. So I want to make sure I consistently have health care, pension, things that you need to live your life. I want to be this crazy freelance artist, but I'd also like to have some health care. So you also want to try to focus on things that you are interested in. Sound of Metal is a movie that I was super interested in doing. But it wasn't well paid. And now I live in Albuquerque and I have a rep. I have an agent. Well, if I say I have an agent, people are like, oh, you're an actor? It's like, no. So I have a representative who helps me open doors. It's a below-the-line thing, and they take a percentage of what I get paid, right? But the give and take is they're also the person who knows everyone who I don't, who can be like, hey, I got an Oscar-winning sound mixer who wants to work on your thing. It's also been kind of a game of chess a little bit. Every single time I take a job or say no to something, it's like the rook takes the knight, the pawn. Like, I've had a couple projects. Living in New Mexico, I get to stay close to my kids, right? I've had a couple of projects in LA that are like, well, we'd love for you to come and work on this, but I have something that's just as good, if not better, paid, or script-wise or whatever, then I will always stay there because it makes more sense to be like, well, this movie seems really cool and I'd really enjoy doing it, and at the same time, I get to stay with my kids. But I did a movie late last year where I was in New Orleans for 3 months. I did this film with Yorgos Lanthimos, who's this film director, did The Favorite. And I read his script, and I saw an opportunity, and it wasn't as well paid as whatever I was getting paid in New Mexico, but I really wanted to be a part of his film because I'd seen his movies, and I feel like they might be important films in the future. So I made that decision. That's when the king takes the queen, and the knight moves to the corner, nestled in the pocket or whatever. Like it's kind of a weird chess thing, but film pays well, I think. I have a lot of friends who love to work, 3 to 4 months on a movie and take 3 or 4 months off. I'm not that person. I consistently want to be working. I used to tell people that finding a job is full-time work. And then once you get on a job, it's a little bit more like a vacation because you don't have to worry about finding a job for 6 weeks or so. And the only time I've ever been comfortable, like, hey, I'll take some time off is when I've just finished a job and I know I have something coming up in like a month or so. It's like, I'll take like 3 weeks off, spend some time with my kids, be a human being for a while. record some music, you know, catch up on Barry, like whatever the mundane things we do in life are. But yeah, film pays well. And like one of the tricky things I know is people negotiating their rates and stuff. Sometimes they're just looking for whoever's the cheapest, and you want to try to get above that. You don't want to be the person who's cheapest. You want to be the guy who's right for the job. And one of the ways you can be that guy is reading the script, getting yourself in there, making yourself part of the project, and then you want to negotiate. Be like, yes, you want these magic hands or magic brain or whatever it is you can give them. That's when you want to negotiate, so that they know that you're worth it. You're not just a guy on a name on a computer. They've seen you, they've talked to you, they know what you can do. What do you do? Are you a director, producer? What specifically are you trying to do? Okay. That's totally fine. That's how I was. I came to school to be a music engineer, and then I ended up being a production sound mixer. I mean, I'm still doing audio for a living, but I definitely changed my focus. And then when I decided to be a production sound mixer, I decided to do films. I've done TV, I've dabbled in other things, but movies is what I love to do. It's my corner, for sure. Last question. Anyone? Yes. So the question is, where did I make my change when I decided to not do music and do film instead? It wasn't like a light switch or anything like that. When I was here in 2008, it was required to have an internship. I don't know if that's a thing anymore, but I had to like take a piece of paper and go to an internship and have someone sign it for me and turn it in as part of my, 900-hour certificate. And I was like, well, I'm going to do music. And then I ended up getting one at a post place. I actually just walked out the front door from the recording school, walked towards the film school, and I just stopped at every studio and location between here and there and dropped off my resume. Because if I wanted an internship, I wanted it to be convenient to where this area was. So I did a music internship down here over at Sunset Sound. I was there for a couple weeks. And then there was a place called Larson Studios, which I think has changed its name, which is right next to the Cat and the Fiddle. I interned over there. And then I also had a weekend internship on a short film where I just assisted Mark Wheelage, who was a sound mixer. I think the main transition happened after I graduated. I was still open. The biggest opportunity I had, because then I took what I had and I applied to many, many online internships. And the one that was like, hey, we'd love to have you, was a production internship. And I feel like that's kind of where I was like, oh, I love this. I could do this for a living and be happy. Plus, I have an audio background. I feel like the internship I had to for recording music was very strict, and I just did not enjoy the people who were there. They were prickly, to say the least. I don't know how else to put it. Like, I was like, am I going to have to acquire a drug habit to work here? Or am I going to have to like sell my soul to be able to get in this door? It just wasn't for me. And production sound, even when I started doing it, I was like, well, maybe I will change my mind. I don't know. It just grew inside me, and it's been the only thing I've ever done for a living that I've been good at that someone wanted to pay me to do. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. Make sure to watch Sound of Metal and Flaming Hot. And I got a couple more things I'm going to plug right now. Since I won the Oscar, I've done 6 projects. One of them has come out. So hopefully within the next couple of months, after the Oscar, the first thing I did was Flaming Hot, which has come out. Then I did 9 months on a TV show called Big Sky, which has also come out. That was a lot of work. After that, I moved on to this movie called Coyote versus Acme. It's this Warner Brother film that's about Wile E. Coyote suing Acme for all of the products that failed for him to catch the Roadrunner. This is a animated live-action hybrid film. Number 1 on our call sheet was an animated coyote. Hasn't come out yet. It's a Warner Brother movie. We shot that in New Mexico. After that, I went on to do this TV show with Emma Stone that was written and directed by the Safdie brothers, who are these guys who did Uncut Gems. It's called The Curse. It's about Emma Stone and Nathan Fiedler. He's this guy's comedian who's on this show called The Rehearsal on HBO. He and Emma Stone are this couple who are trying to make this HGTV show in like a cursed town in New Mexico. It's like a dark comedy. Hasn't come out yet. It's supposed to be on Showtime. Then I did another movie with Emma Stone in New Orleans called A-N-D, directed by Yorgos Lanthimos, which should also be coming out. And then I just finished working on another Disney Plus movie with Eva Longoria, this time starring, not directing in the movie. It's a remake of Alexander's terrible, no good, very bad day. So hopefully that'll be all for us to watch next summer, about the time that I'll probably be back here doing another Q&A. But I really appreciate everybody online and everybody who came down. And if anybody has any questions, I'd love to talk to you, everyone, about everything. Okay? All right. Thank you, everybody. And no.